Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video in the Engaging with Art series. Today's topic is artist statements, and this was something that was brought up to me in a conversation that I had with a friend not long ago. The conversation was interesting because this is a friend who is very much a part of the art world, but insisted to me that they don't actively seek out artist statements. And for someone like me who uses artist statements regularly and they are a very important part of my practice, I was actually surprised by our conversation, and so it got me thinking maybe I should actually discuss this in a video. So I'd like to start this discussion with some loose definitions and categorizing. And as I usually do, I want to stress that a lot of this comes from my vantage point as an artist and a viewer, and so it's not necessarily definitive, but it's what I've really come to understand over time of just being in the practice, essentially. I think a good first way to describe an artist statement is words by an artist about their overall practice or work in particular that offers viewers a deeper understanding of their goals and the artistic intent behind them. Oftentimes online, you'll find this on an about page or a biography page for an artist. Sometimes it can be included on a CV as well. That's typically when you're looking for a general artist statement. A lot of times if you're at an actual exhibition, you'll find the artist statement printed somewhere on a gallery wall, or it will oftentimes appear in a catalog for the artwork. If there are artist books or brochures, you'll find an artist statement accompanying either a foreword or somewhere that is prominent, somewhere that is easily accessible, that's noticeable. And again, usually this is just a large block of text, typically a paragraph or two, that you'll likely see with the words artist statement nearby. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes you'll see a general artist statement, but sometimes you'll see one for a specific work. And so that's another aspect of artist statements I wanted to highlight, and that's types of them. So again, you have a general artist statement. Oftentimes this is referring to an artist practice overall. They'll usually help viewers understand what type of work the artist produces, how that work is produced, some of the overarching concepts or principles that are explored by the work. Sometimes you'll even find if an artist sticks to a particular style, this is the place where the artist will specifically highlight or point that out to the viewer. The consistent production tenets that an artist holds to will be outlined in an artist statement. Moving more specific, sometimes you'll see an artist statement for a particular body of work. And again, this is specifically for that work and oftentimes will accompany an exhibition. This is going to explore the concepts that are on display. Sometimes it as well can talk about the production of the work, what went into the work, or the inspiration behind it. But this is, again, becoming more specific. Sometimes as well, a statement about a body of work will actually already have an idea that the audience has read the general statement for the artist, and so some things will already be expected to be known by the viewer at this point. And then when we move even more specific, you'll sometimes find a statement for a particular piece. A lot of times this will accompany a piece if it's in a museum collection, for example, and sometimes this will actually offer a bit of background on the artist as well, so they can be little microcosms talking about a lot of things in one small block of text, essentially. But again, this is going to be exploring the piece itself and might explore the production, might explore the concepts, but it's going to have it at its focus, this individual work. Now, when we look at all these different types of artist statements, obviously you can tell they're doing different things at different levels while always still being in relation to the artist. And so that's why I want to discuss function. What are some of the possible functions of statements and how can we understand what they're doing in relation to the artist and their work? One aspect is a starting point. Sometimes artist statements allow viewers to understand what type of artist this is and what to expect with the work on display and across all of the artist's body of work in general. So it's essentially a primer for the viewer to have a better understanding kind of going in. Other times it can be an explanation. Artist statements can help to elucidate what an artist seeks to express and delineate what is attempted to be experienced by the viewer. It can sort of help understanding in that sense. Artists can sometimes be a bit more nebulous with artist statements, and so I describe it as well as these working as windows. You know, these could be a brief window into the work that's meant to be more of a catalyst. So things might not be explicitly explained. Certain words and certain things are used very deliberately in order to help a viewer arrive in understanding. At other times, artist statements will be a sort of call to action or a framework, especially when work is motivated by political or social activism. A lot of times, artists who are trying to portray a very particular message will use an artist statement as an extra means to help push that message forward or to help elucidate, again, what that is trying to say, be said through the work. It could also be trying to push the viewer to reconsider something or reimagine something. And so you can see how the statement is working in tandem with the piece itself at this point. When we discuss this aspect of function, obviously it calls to mind the agency behind the statement. And artists obviously are going to employ certain agency with statements and how they decide to both write them and portray them to the audience. I think it's important to remember that artist statements are a lot like the titles of pieces, that they have a very particular ends, and that sometimes an artist will use them deliberately, maybe to provoke the audience, maybe to direct their thought process while viewing the work. We have to remember that these are, again, very much tied to the work a lot of times and can be very specific on part of the artist. And so that means this is a very subjective means. It is in the hands of the artists, and they can be used as tools in some respects. You will definitely find artists who are not very keen on artist statements, meaning they'll do them just because they kind of have to, like utilitarian focus. But I think in the modern era, and I think the past couple centuries as well, artist statements have become much, much more than that and are very much more subjective. If we want to look at them in objective terms, again, at their simplest level, they're typically meant to facilitate the experience between the viewer and the artwork. Again, at the very end of the day, we're trying to just bridge that gap. This obviously, I think, is a good moment to bring in my own work because artist statements are incredibly critical for me. And that's because words are critical for me in my practice in general. Artist statements just naturally become very vital as a result. I consider them essential. I consider them essential reading on part of the viewer even in order to help facilitate the connection. I think I tend to go towards the window route where I'm hoping to sort of invite viewers in and lead them to the emotional conceptual experience that I hope they have at the heart of the piece by way of these statements. I am incredibly meticulous about my artist statements. I can sometimes agonize over them, as a matter of fact, in my word choice. But again, it's because I'm trying to facilitate that connection and really focus on being a catalyst between the viewer and the work itself. Artist statements are sometimes more easily understood by folks who aren't as privy to reading artwork, so to speak, in those terms. There's definitely a level of didacticism for me when it comes to artist statements. I do feel like my place as the artist is meant to help understanding, so there's a teacherly aspect of it when I'm presenting artist statements. I am always actively aware of my audience when I'm writing my statements. I'm always trying to keep a keen awareness of what are they thinking, what are they experiencing, and how can I foster that or help it in a particular way. I do also have what are called conceptual statements, and these are a little bit different than I would describe as regular artist statements or, say, conceptual overviews, for example, because these statements are more a part of the work itself. The voices shift sometimes. They're not often coming from my voice. Sometimes they feel like they're from the piece itself. Sometimes they're feeling like some obscure outer voice. And so these are not as much meant to facilitate connection for the audience, but are more meant to be a part of the work. Again, I don't fully understand these. I know that they are sincere and a part of my practice, but they are much more part of the experience. And so I wouldn't describe them as artist statements proper for that reason. So now, as I'm wrapping things up here, as viewers, what can we do? Where does this leave us? I want to first just mention that one of the most important things as viewers we can do is to simply seek out these statements. Look for them, seek them. As I mentioned, whether you're online or in an in-person exhibition, you're going to find them in usually obvious places. Check the About page, check the biography page online, or at an exhibition, look in a catalog, a brochure, and again, sometimes you'll just find it plastered up on a wall, which is great because it's very accessible. I think it's important for us to always remember that artists include statements deliberately. Most of the time, they're not just asked and do it just because they have to. Truthfully, a lot of them include it, and so seek that out. There's a reason that they included that statement. I think it's important for us to recall that. I think another thing we can remember is even with music, a lot of musicians in, say, the fronts of their physical albums, even at present day, will include a foreword or prologue in the booklet. This is a great way for us to understand, what is this musician trying to say with this record? What is this collection of songs meant to do for us? Even if we don't find that sort of thing or don't have a physical album with us, we can still do a quick search for the background on the album oftentimes, and then you'll find an interview with the musician, and that usually will help you understand what was going into the album itself. Again, all of these words are meant to help us have a deeper experience and appreciation for what it is we're experiencing. As mentioned earlier, I think it's important for us to keep in mind the types of artist statements that I described. Remember, keep in mind, what am I looking at? Is this X, Y, or Z? Is this a general statement? Is this for a body of work? Is this for a particular piece? Let that inform your understanding too. You can't expect to learn about an artist's entire practice if you're looking at a statement for just one piece or one body of work. So it's important to kind of take that into consideration. And as I was describing, use these as looking glasses, use these as lenses, as windows into the work. Don't expect to find the answers, but instead expect to be directed, expect to be possibly provoked to a certain end, and let that just inform your experience. I think I'll stop there for now, but hopefully this has been helpful, and hopefully it makes you a bit keener when you're looking for artist statements in the future. I hope you'll share this with anybody who finds it worthwhile, and thank you so much for watching. Till the next one, take care everybody.